Yes, guys, welcome back to my personal channel. Welcome back to another live stream. What a 24 hours it's been for us. Frank Lampard has been shown the door, and we found out a bunch of different players that we are going to want to see get shown the door within the space of a few months as well. Oh, look at this timing as well. Big up Lawrence in the cut. Yeah, everyone hit the like and subscribe button if you guys haven't done so already. We are sitting here patiently waiting on Thomas Tuchel's announcement. It is literally just a matter of hours, but this should be coming soon. I'm guessing maybe a 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. announcement with the fact that Chelsea have a late training session. But before we start, we're going to go through the panel. Lawrence, first up, how you been, man?
I'm good. Just like, well, you said patiently waiting. I'm kind of impatiently waiting at this point, or impatient, whatever the word is. Because, they're kind of just blue balling us since yesterday. I mean, yeah, we got over the Lampard sacking and, all well and good. But after that disappointment, give me at least a little bit of excitement and a point, Tuchel, because I can't really be bothered to go into this game tomorrow with some assistant coaches, on the sideline. Because, at least give me something interesting. Come on.
Exactly. Well, to be honest, so first thing we'll go about is all this player drama that we're seeing pop up, because I'm hearing more and more rumors popping out the further we're getting into this day. And yeah, you're right about how long this announcement's taken. I've been up like how many times throughout the last night I've been waking up trying to expect an announcement. We hadn't popped up one because I was expecting an early announcement. It was the same thing with the Lampard news. But Alex, chat to me, man. How you been, bro?
Hey man, I tell you what, this whole time has been absolutely crazy. I don't know if any of you guys can remember a managerial sacking that's attracted so much media attention. It's incredible at the moment. Even David Moyes back in 2013 when he came crashing down. I don't remember all the player drama, all the media attention, already slating the new manager, already hyping him up to be the next best thing in the world. It's absolutely crazy. I can see why all of us are probably waking up at different times looking for new information.
Yeah, and that's the thing you were saying as well. Like, we haven't seen one since, I like to say, maybe Jose's second sacking. It's a bit different as well because we didn't really have much options there. We ended up just going for Gus Hiddink for the second time round. But that's the only thing that comes semi-similar to this. But we're going to delve deeper into Thomas Tuchel later on in the show. I just want to get the numbers to come up a little bit. Sadiq, chat to me, man. How's the last 24 hours been for you?
Yeah, he was on my stream last night, man. It's crazy. I'm waiting for Lawrence to come on as well. Obviously, we've been talking recently on Twitter. But yeah, everything's good, man. I mean, just waiting for this announcement. I think we're all waiting for this announcement so we can just drop a video, I'm sure. So hopefully it's very soon, and there's a lot of things to talk about for this one.
Yeah, man, you know exactly what the grind is. And last up, Scott, big up yourself, man. How you been?
Not too bad, having a couple of Chelsea Twitter on strings over the past 24 hours or so, and just watching it all go absolutely mental on Twitter between everyone. But yeah, similar to you guys, waiting for the announcement. I think we know it's coming at this point. It's just a case of we want it to be announced, so we know it's a definite. We know he's going to be working with the players here and there, and yeah, just waiting for it to come.
Yeah, I mean, like there is definitely a lot to go through. We're not going to talk about Tuchel immediately. We're going to save that for about 15, 20 minutes in, because firstly, I do want to talk about, and we do need to discuss this, player power. And we are here at the exact same situation we were in about 5 years ago, where we were losing managers to issues with players. Same issue with 10 years ago. And it's not just the three players in here, and it's also to varying different effects. But Rudiger is being pulled out as the main scapegoat. He's going to a point where he's apparently bullying academy players and trying to chirps up any single manager that was potentially linked with coming to Chelsea to replace Frank Lampard. And the weird thing is, he looks like he's actually going to benefit from that as well. I can't confirm or deny whether all of the rumors are legit, but with Rudiger especially, I think there's so many different rumors coming out about the same guy that there has to be some element of truth with it. Same thing with Alonso. We already know the situation with him and West Brom. We already know him and Lampard have fallen out for time at this point. Kepa as well, and his inability to even take basic criticism, even though he's had the worst individual season for a goalkeeper in Premier League history. And also rumours that even Jorginho and Kovacic were involved with some of this as well. Apparently Jorginho was one of the players that had gone to the board as well to speak about Frank Lampard. Kovacic was basically airing Frank Lampard for the final few weeks of his managerial reign. Guys, what were your thoughts? Lawrence, I'll start with you. Chat to me about player power, and why are we in the same situation that we were in 5 years ago again?
It's honestly crazy, isn't it? It's honestly crazy. It just keeps and keeps happening. And as much as we've discussed this over the last couple of days, plenty of times, you and me, over various channels. It was time Frank had to go at this point because the performances on the pitch just weren't justifiable anymore at this point. But he was most certainly trying to fix certain issues that are around. Obviously he couldn't solve every issue all at once. Certain players he wanted to get rid of and didn't get rid of. It's no surprise that bar Kovacic, he wanted to get rid of all of them that apparently now seem to have been the biggest issues. Whether this was all on pitch performance based, why he wanted to get rid of them, or whether he was worried that they would cause issues in the background, who knows? But what we do know is that he wanted to get rid of them. And the fact that certain people like Rudiger, like Alonso, like Kepa, like Jorginho, apparently, even though I haven't heard the Jorginho going to the board, but maybe I just missed something. And Kovacic
that
as
one
well.
Was like, it was a source that literally messaged me as soon as I was trying to back Jorginho in the chat, and it was one of them legit ones. So it's like, okay, so he was a bit involved. Cool.
All right, fair. No, I did hear as well that all of those 5 were involved, but I just the him going to the board I haven't heard before. It's a weird one, especially the Rudiger bullying one. That sounds really weird to me. I never was the biggest fan of Rudiger. I always thought he was a bit dodgy. Mostly on pitch stuff, obviously. I've never had an issue with him off the pitch. But the fact that he seems to have been always really, really good with Callum Hudson-Odoi and they calling him little bro, big bro, that kind of thing, did surprise me a lot with the whole bullying the younger players thing. Obviously, Callum, let's be honest with ourselves, isn't fully in this whole young players realm as the likes of Tammy, Billy, Mason, Tomori, Reece. They're kind of more of a separate group almost from the Hudson-Odoi camp. There's been many issues with the Hudson-Odoi camp over the years, whether it was a transfer request on the Sarri or whether it was different situations. Not exactly ideal. So I'm not 100% sure. That one I find a bit dodgy, but why we have this situation again, honestly, I can't tell you. What I find the most baffling thing to me is that the board would ever listen. I don't think that was the decisive, thing in him getting sacked, right? I don't think the players having a moan to the board was the issue why he got sacked, because clearly the performances on the pitch weren't good enough either. But the fact that this is even listened to me, is utterly ridiculous. Obviously, we had player power issues many years ago as well, whether it was with the likes of Lampard, Terry, Drogba, and the Villas-Boas, and I'm sure a couple of others as well. But those people had earned themselves that right, to say things. These people that are moaning now, they've done absolutely nothing for our club. Zero. Mm-hmm. Yes, I know we won the Europa League with them, but they weren't even any of the main players in that Europa League campaign either. So you can't even give them that credit. And okay, I know Alonso won the league, but okay, he had one good season in his entire career. Let's not overhype him, all right? Because that's honestly all that Marcos Alonso had. So I don't really know how he got to this position, but it needs to be sorted out. And whether we have a different manager in Thomas Tuchel now or not, some of these players need to be gotten rid of ASAP. Well, I say some of them, all of them, realistically.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly. It was the ones that Lampard was trying to get rid of that were the ones that are basically holding us back at this point. Alex, chat to us about Chelsea and our continuous problems with player power. And do you see Tuchel struggling with the same issues as well?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what. First I want to just quickly start with the players, just because I think the player power and this continued disruption that rightfully Lawrence and Julius have pointed out that continues to happen every year is part of a larger problem. I'm sure all of you guys are Chelsea fans. You can attest that for the past 4 seasons, every time between January and February, Chelsea seem to go on a massive slump with their form, and they just about claw it back at the end to get to the top 4 what they want. And it's always a horrifying loss, whether it's 2-0 against Leicester, where Chelsea could barely create a chance, or 4-0 against Bournemouth, which I think happened 2 seasons in a row. It's happened under Conte, Sarri, and now Lampard. So I think it's almost a wider culture, more than just player power, but the mentality just can't seem to shift. And I think with the players, but I guess I think the players have clearly exercised some anger, but in terms of Kepa and Rudiger, I would sort of understand a little, just because Kepa has seen his career disintegrate over the past year. And obviously the truth is in the middle of, it's either the player's angry or Lampard's angry. The truth of who's right or wrong is in the middle. I can imagine Kepa's probably wanting Lampard to go just because he wants to get his career back on track. And with Rudiger, I can understand, because during the summer, there was the consistent reports that he was constantly in Timo Werner's ear, in Kai Havertz's ear, trying to get these players to come in. So we all joked. I think we all joked that Rudiger's getting our new transfers in, and he's going to be shafted out of the club. Maybe there was a little truth to that. He didn't like it at all. Yeah. I think with this whole culture of these players, it's going to take some time to shift. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. And I think it's a lot more than just these players need to be moved on. Perhaps it is maybe something that needs to be done inside the club to stamp a bit more authority on the players and pick their mentality up in periods of time when it seems to disintegrate every year, or almost like clockwork.
Yeah, I do think that also delves into the thing that we've been trying to do the last 5 years in terms of actually trying to keep a long-term manager to continue a project. I do think a long-term manager would define that sort of respect within himself in the hierarchy of Chelsea, but we never have that long-lasting manager anyway. Sadiq, I want to come to you because you didn't really believe a lot of these rumors as well. You think a lot of the players have been thrown under the bus. So chat to me about your thoughts.
I mean, obviously, there's probably Frank Lampard did want him to go during the season, but I felt like Lampard coming out talking about his professionalism and coming back into the team was a huge turning point when you compare it to like Marcos Alonso. And also when you look at little things like, I know Lawrence talked about Callum Hudson-Odoi, being a separate type of camp with the player. You see Mason Mountson, you see the youth players liking his posts on Instagram. Like, none of these reports add up at the moment. And I understand that the media the UK media love Frank Lampard. They wanted him to stay. I get it. But it just doesn't add up how everything's being pushed against this player. And I'm not the biggest Rudiger fan as well. You know me, I prefer Christensen as well. But I'm not going to scapegoat this guy fully. There's definitely beef between Lampard and him before when he came back into the team, 100%. But Lampard spoke positive about him when he came back. So it doesn't really add up. And like I said, if he was bullying the youth, these youth players won't be following this guy or liking his posts and stuff and commenting as well. So
is it all the youth players or is it like a select few?
Bro, I saw at least 10 youth players on the likes, literally, at least. And the comments were Emerson, Martson, and Mount. So
can I just ask you guys on a clarification on what was actually said in the reports, because I can't fully remember. Was it a specific thing to Rudiger about the bullying of the younger players, or was that just the senior players were bullying the junior players? Because Rudiger, if anyone, seems to be one of the guys that wouldn't be involved in that. I could see a few others be involved in that, someone like Alonso. I could see more involved in that rather than Rudiger, so that's why I'm asking, was it just Rudiger that was claimed to have been doing that? I thought it was more...
Yeah, it was the Carefree Youth article. He said the things Rudiger has done behind the scenes is disgraceful. Talking to new potential managers before the club have sacked the current one. Bullying of academy players, and what's worse is he's the most likely man to profit out of this. Here's the thing, it is still a bit vague on that. Like, it says bullying academy players, but you don't know how many, you don't know which ones specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he could have really said something or did something, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. Is he talking about like Lewis Bate and Junta Bell, or is he talking about like the ones that are actually already first team players, like a Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham? Both kind of camps of those are academy players, but the ones are already first teamers, so we don't really know who they're talking about. So I guess that's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, it is a weird one because they tell you what it is, but there's no specifics in there. So your mind can go crazy and just create any sort of story to try and just fit in with the articles that are coming out as well. Scott, let me hear your thoughts on this.
I agree with Sadiq in a sense of like, there's so much we're hearing from so many different sides. Like we've heard from Christian Falk that actually Rudiger wasn't involved at all, that there was no truth to that. We've heard it from the other side as well, from the likes of Matt Law. So we don't really know what's true. What I will say, and I agree in the sense of like, you don't want to scapegoat him like fully if it comes out that it's not true or it's not as true as we're suspecting. One thing I will say, you touched on the Tuchel point, is I know we're going to focus more in depth later on. He won't accept this sort of stuff. He just won't. The type of manager he is, he won't accept this stuff. If someone like acts even a smidgen of what we're hearing, they're gone. They're training with the under 23s, the under 18s, or not being around the squad. And I think that what I will say is, if this is true, I agree with what some people are saying. This is unacceptable. If this is true, as I said, I think that the attitude of some of these players is unacceptable. I think you look at all these players, the ones involved, None of them have got anything to complain about. I'd understand if this was someone like a Hakim Ziyech, if he hadn't been getting as much game time, or Pulisic or something to an extent. But these are players that have been tragic for at least a year, have been absolutely terrible, have got nothing to complain about, that have not put in performances where they can say, yeah, fair enough, I've got something to, I should be playing more, I should be having more of a role in this. And yeah, as I said, if what's been said about Rudiger is true, from the sense of like from the Azpilicueta side of things, where he's trying to get more cohesion in the camp and Rudiger's just not having it, then that's unacceptable. That from that standpoint. But again, it depends on how much validity there is to all the reports and which ones have more validity and to others.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one. It's going to be a more developing story, and we are just going to have to wait for more news to pop up before we can get some clarification on this. Quick question I do want to ask, and this one will go towards you, Alex. Tuchel's attitude towards academy players. Now, from what I've heard, like, it's positive. Like, it's not going to be like a situation with Mourinho where all of our youth players literally just go to Vitesse and then get sold out. There will be opportunities for these players. Am I correct?
Yes, you are. And I think there is an element of fear in the Chelsea fan base, rightly so, that after Lampard's gone, you've seen all these youth players come in, that we're going to say goodbye to that. And that was probably more enjoyable than a trophy, seeing Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham step up and perform. But Tuchel's got, I won't go into it too much right now because we're going to talk more about it, but Tuchel's definitely been given an unfair reputation when it comes to youngsters by some people, and the fact that he haven't seen them play at PSG. Just a quick one. Last season, Tuchel gave minutes to players like Adoual Ashish, Tanguy Nianzou, the guy who went to Bayern Munich, and a few others. He gave over 500 minutes to them, and they were sold on. And just another quick one. The season before, you guys might have heard of Nkunku, Moussa Diaby. They were players he gave 1,000 minutes in Liga and Champions League minutes. He was actually really dedicated to try and get them in, and PSG sold them for 10 million a pop. So if he had been given the opportunity a bit more, we'd probably see these youngsters play in PSG right now. But I wouldn't be too worried, Chelsea fans, about Tuchel and academy players. I think he will still keep that bridge open.
Yeah, I think with Thomas Tuchel anyway, I think there's a lot of over worrying about him as a manager. A lot of people saying that he isn't tactically flexible, which, to be honest, I think is a load of BS. I'm hearing a lot of people also mainly worried about the fact that he didn't really work out at PSG, didn't work out at Dortmund for reasons outside of the football pitch. But I also think both of those are just victims of circumstance. I don't think it really takes too much out of him as a manager, or is too much to look at in terms of the fact that it could be another Antonio Conte who's just going to continuously beef with the board and continuously ask for too much.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. And with the, I'll be happy to go into it now. With the Dortmund thing, there's been a bit of a trend with Tuchel, actually. When he left Mainz for Dortmund, he did see that there was some people in the club saying Tuchel is an amazing manager, but as a person, you either love him or you hate him. And he adapted that at PSG. Players like Kylian Mbappe said, "You've been a wonderful wonderful part of this history to the club. Like, it's going to be awful to see you go." Things like that. He was actually really, really, really liked at PSG. He adapted that sort of attitude that people have been criticising him. And I think at Dortmund, the fallouts with the board, it was definitely mixed. When Dortmund had the terrorist attack on the bus, which a lot of us will know about, that was we don't know too much about it, but what we do know is that Tuchel was fuming that the game only got delayed by a day. He wanted it delayed by a week, whereas the Dortmund board apparently pressured him into playing into that game. And the Dortmund board deny that. So, like we said, we can't, like with the Rudiger thing and everything, it's two sides. We can't pull a truth. With the PSG thing, though, as I mentioned, Tuchel gave lots of minutes to players like Diaby and Nkunku, Nianzou. He was building quite a solid team in the 18-19 season, and then all these players were sold. Then, more especially last year, where we did see you've probably seen in headlines like Forget French Football News, Tuchel and Leonardo, the sporting director, going back and forth. Just to read it off to you, Tuchel in PSG in 1920, or the end of 1920, they let Thomas Meunier, Thiago Silva, Adoual Ashish, Tanguy Nianzou all go on freeze. Meunier and Thiago Silva are crucial parts of his team. To replace them, he was given Sergio Rico, a backup keeper, which was fairly useless. Danilo Pereira from Porto, which is a centre midfielder who's in his late 20s and at a league, even in Ligue 1, which is perceived to be a weaker league, it's not as weak as you think, has still quite struggled. Alessandro Florenzi, a player who's received little game time at Roma, and Rafinha from Barcelona. And all these players actually arrived in the last couple of days of the window after Tuchel came out and said in the press where the fallout came from. He said, "You've given away my best players, and I've been given no one. We're going to have to expect to do worse this season. So please don't expect of me if you're not going to back me to get anything." And then the war between them started. So there is a bit of an overhype to it. I don't want to go too long forever, but there is a bit of an overhypeness to Tuchel falling out with the board. He's a volatile person. I saw Rory Jennings really worried about the fact he's an incredibly volatile person. Will be in a safe spot in 2 years' time. Tuchel's shown he is very good at adapting to the club. He's very good at actually improving as a manager and his man management skills. So with Chelsea, I think we should give him a bit more of a clean slate than what's currently being talked up in the media.
I agree. If I can just I think Chelsea is the much bigger issue with dealing with a manager than Tuchel will be than dealing with a board. Significantly worse. I mean, look at what's been going on at Chelsea for the last 15, 20 years. We get rid of every manager whenever we just bloody fancy. It's like my mum when she tries to fancy a change in her bloody living room. Just move things around because why not? Do you know what I mean? Chelsea is the issue here, not Tuchel. There's no denying that there was a couple of issues at Dortmund and maybe even at Mainz with Tuchel. But most of the time, and I will say most of the time, he had a fair shout at criticizing certain things. Maybe he should have worded it differently, and maybe he shouldn't always have done it in public. The way he handled it maybe wasn't always perfect. But hey, if you're a manager and you're judged on performances and then you're not exactly helped and supported by the board, whichever the board is, whichever club they're in, you're going to feel let down and a bit frustrated and going to vent that frustration, especially if you're a very confident guy and that believes in what you're trying to achieve and do.
Yeah.
I think as well,
Go on.
I was going to say a couple on the points. I think as well, in terms of tactics, there are very few managers in the world that are better than Thomas Tuchel tactically. The guy, he models himself after Pep Guardiola. There's so many comparisons you can have between them from the kind of moderate research I've done. And just to go back to the point that I mentioned in terms of how would he react in a situation like we've got, I just want to read you a bit of an extract I found on Wikipedia about this. Is one of the players they had back in 2017, Emre Moore, in a training session after a defeat against Bayern Munich in April 2017. Moore and his teammates were sent on a run by Tuchel. When Tuchel asked Moore to continue for an extra round, Moore quite loudly protested against that. Tuchel's reaction was quite fiery, to say the least. And he, I don't think he barely played. He made 12 appearances after that in the Bundesliga. So Tuchel doesn't accept this sort of thing. And I think
to be fair, Moore was very, very young. So I'm not sure whether the lack of playing time had to do with that or whether he was just.
To be fair, you look at so Emre Moore at the time was touted as one of these next big thing players. Yeah. And you look at the team they had at the time, it was very young. It was you've got Dembele coming in, you've got other players like Isak coming through at the same time as well, Weigl, Brun Larsen, and other young players coming through. And to just basically, this is a guy they had, I think, for 2 years or 1 or 2 years they bought him for, and to just completely just keep him out. It shows what type of guy he is. He's a massive control freak. He's a massive control freak when it comes to the diets of the players, comes to their training plans, comes to everything. And as well in terms of the tactics, he is so tactically brilliant. At times, it was reported that at times in matches, he could switch his formation and tactics up 6 different times in a match. Yeah. He could go from playing a 4-4-2 to a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, 4-1-4-1, 3 at the back. He could go from anything. And he had players playing in positions you never thought. You had a player like Rafael Guerreiro going from being a centre mid for Portugal in the Euros to being a left back under him. Yeah. Just saw qualities that he thought could fit a left back. And guess what? Guerreiro's still playing as a left back / left wing back today.
Yeah. If no
you
one
might actually see left wing Alonso. Mad.
Yeah, no one else.
Just a lot better.
Sorry, just to quickly say as well, Scott's made some really, really good points there, actually, especially about tactical flexibility. And I think there might be a couple of people watching who would completely disagree. They'll say, what do you mean? Tuchel's wedded to a formation. But both Scott and that fan would be right. At Dortmund, Tuchel used 7 different formations in one season for over 5 appearances. He was incredibly flexible, as Scott was mentioning, and he was getting wins. He was one of the best. I think he had a better win percentage than Jurgen Klopp, which is a little unfair because Jurgen spent 7 years there. But he was incredibly flexible. At PSG, he took a completely different approach. He said, okay, I've got 4 of the best players in the world. What I need to do, and what he was asked to do, is I need to get the best out of these players. And being flexible, sometimes, like if you're going to chop and change formations, it might not do that. So what he did, he devised one system in his last season, which was a 4-2-2, which we might speak about in a bit. And he used that for 14 games. He didn't lose a single game of any of them. That's just in the league. In the Champions League, every time he used it, he won every game. And he's wedded to that pretty much. So what you might expect from Tuchel, you might get a man who picks one formation, but he stylizes one system around the players we have and weds to it, and we get a bunch of wins. Or we might get a Tuchel goes, okay, we've got such a wide array of talent here. Let's chop and change. Let's make sure for each opponent we're a different side. We'll counter each of their strengths, and then we can make wins that way. So it's actually pretty exciting how flexible he can be, and how flexible he can be, and how stubborn he can be with a formation, and both will work.
Yeah, let's just go through a few super chats quickly. Kevin says, project continues with Tuchel. We need the toxic players out. Youth will still shine under Tuchel, and I'm excited to see him make progress. Come on, you Blues. Yep, back that.
I agree.
Some more like Bielsa than Maurizio. Sorry, I don't want to say. I don't want to civilize managers.
I'd say Bielsa's more like Sarri, or Sarri's more like Bielsa, because you look at Bielsa at the minute with Leeds, it's very much one system he wants to play. It's just a problem of he doesn't have the personnel to play. He has the personnel to play the system, but defensively he gets caught out because the defense is terrible with Bielsa. And I can't remember too much of his time at Bilbao and at Chile to remember exactly what type of system they played there and if it was the same as they do at Leeds. But yeah, I'd say Bielsa and Sarri are more similar rather than Tuchel. Tuchel, I'd say, is on the level of like a Guardiola, like where it's just constantly thinking about all the little things where it's, how can I change this? How can I tweak that? What can I do with this player? What can I do with that? Could this player play here because of these attributes? It all comes down to it's getting the best out of the players with the specific attributes they have and utilising that.
Yeah, spot on.
All right, what other super chats we got? Random Indian man sent €2, so I appreciate that. Jester, big up Jester. What do you say? Respect to the panel, go get ready to make that cheddar. Please, Chelsea fans, don't use reports from the media to do. I think he means not to do rash things. Yeah, I do agree with that. I like, even with the stuff that we're talking about with some of the individual players that might have been against Frank Lampard, all we're doing is talking about the news that we've read. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're true or not. That's why I made a habit of calling all of them alleged rumors, because I don't want to call them legit rumors. We don't know that yet. What else do we say? AC has all the qualities of being a top DM. You're damn right, Brazil. And I move into that as well. The sort of tactics that we expect to see from Thomas Tuchel. Now, we've already spoken about a 4-2-3-1, potential 4-2-2-2s, and the fact that he is going to be a very versatile manager that will try and find the best system that suits the players that we've had. And we had worries at the start of the season over Lampard's style of play, because when we were playing the 4-2-3-1, there are the questions of, are Werner and Pulisic going to occupy the same spaces? Will Ziyech and Havertz occupy the same spaces? How do you expect Thomas Tuchel to manage that problem and especially find the best style of play to suit our team as well?
The question to me? Oh, so who's the two?
Oh, that was to Alex.
So,
Sure. Right, to handle, I know what you mean, especially about the players occupying the spaces. I think you guys will attest to how annoying it must have been to watch Chelsea this season at different points. The 4-3-3, you've seen Havertz be a ghost during games, and then you've seen Pulisic, and I'm not sure if you guys agree, but it feels like whenever you play Pulisic and CHO, it feels like one's wasted. Whichever one's on the right and can't invert and come inside, it feels like they're a bit more limited, and which one's on the left has got the freedom. And so it can be a bit frustrating with that. With Tuchel, I think, as we've spoken about, he will find the best system to deploy. I mean, my personal take, I think a 4-2-2 or 4-4-2 might work with Havertz kind of up front, but dropping deep, like a deep line forward, because we've seen, I think, even at times in the Leicester game, when he was in the final third, picking up the ball, he looked good, and he's very good in tight spaces. And you'd see Werner as an advanced forward, who, when you're counter-attacking, he'll electrify the defence and get in behind. And then you'd have people like Pulisic, Ziyech, Callum Hudson-Odoi, mix and matching on the wings, but being able to float to the sides. And we might come on to it a bit later, but I think one player, there's a couple of players who I think could really star in this team. One, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He's such a unique player, and I think Tuchel will like that. I think he'll look at him and think, you've got such a good skill set, I can use you in specific situations, like Choupo-Moting, but probably in a more stylish sense. And tell you what,
a bit more as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I tell you what, if he does complete the romantic journey, Charlie Musonda. Musanda's very well known for being good on both wings. If he completes his journey from injury, which you guys have probably seen, he's been dedicated towards, Tuchel might look at him and think, you know what, I'm going to give you a chance. But as we said, time will tell. But what do you guys think?
I think it's going to be mostly a mix between 4-2-2, like you touched on, and probably a 4-3-3. And then in the 3 midfield, I think he'll probably have to make a decision between Ziyech and Havertz, because at least the way he's played at PSG, he likes his forwards to have pace. So I don't really see Ziyech used as a proper winger in a front three, personally. So I think if he wants to use Ziyech, he has to put him into the midfield. But then where do you put Havertz in that? So that's why I think probably he will try to use a 4, where he, like Alex touched on, will use Werner, Havertz, Werner, Tammy, that kind of thing, with Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi on the wings. And then you can use Ziyech out wide, because then you still have 3 fast forwards, which I think will probably be the logic. I think the question then just will be, in either formation, what will be the midfield? Because we have a very different set of skill set in our midfield compared to what PSG have. We don't have a Marquinhos. I'm not 100% sure if Marquinhos still played DM this season now that Thiago Silva had left, or if he now has
a couple of times. I could be wrong.
Yeah, mix and match. Yeah,
exactly. And then obviously they have the likes of Verratti, Paredes, and Idrissa Gueye, and obviously Ander Herrera as well. There's very few players at our club that I would classify as any of those. Maybe Kante and Idrissa Gueye, just Kante being a lot better, but somewhat similar, I guess. But I would struggle to who to compare Mason Mount to. Maybe Kovacic is a bit like Verratti, I guess. But I would struggle to see who he would put in the midfield too. I would very much so be excited to try a Kante Mount double pivot, whatever, deep midfield 2, whatever you want to call that. And then I do still think eventually it won't be Rice, but I do still think we will sign a DM in the summer, and hopefully one that Tuchel will be happy with.
I'll be real.
Just quick one. I gotta head out. Yeah, I'll see you guys soon.
Take care, man. Everyone, check out Worldwide Chelsea. Links in the description. Bless. Go on, Scott.
I think I'll be real. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Havertz playing if we play a 4-3-3, you see Havertz playing as a striker sometimes. He did it with Cavani. Cavani wasn't blessed with pace, but had the ability to drop deep, drop into little pockets of space, allow the wingers of Neymar and Mbappe at the time to cut in behind, similarly to what Liverpool are doing in terms of, like, you got the Firmino who can drop deep and link up the play, and you got the Salah and Mane to run behind. Similar sort of system where he didn't have quite the speed in Cavani at times when he was playing, so then he was able to drop deep, pick up the pocket space. I wouldn't be surprised about that. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Jorginho come back into the team and play in a slightly different role. I think he's the closest we've got in terms of the Verratti mould, where you haven't really got the speed, but you've got the passing ability. You've got I think we don't see enough of Jorginho in terms of his mobility because of how deep he plays, and because of how rigid he's often been asked to be in the systems we've seen under Lampard and under Sarri. So I wonder if he's slightly higher up in not necessarily playing like that box-to-box role, but certainly being a bit more mobile, being able to express himself a bit more. I wonder if that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a good point. Liz, if I just answer the question there? Yeah, go for it. With the midfield thing, it's a good point in terms of we lack the physicality and sometimes creativity. I think Mount, I saw a really good chart the other day. Mount, I feel like divide is growing about him. Some people think he is the Messiah. Some people think he is awful. And I think both are quite far apart. He's a talented midfielder, but he's not going to be able to take the creative burden all on his own. And I think with the midfielders, Lawrence, you were touching on it about the double pivot thing. Like you say, could use Kante and Mount, and then maybe that could work against some sides, but you'd imagine against other teams it might be a bit pinned back. I think we did see it against Fulham, actually, when Fulham went down to 10 men. We saw Kante and Mount pull back a bit into midfield too, and it sort of worked, but a 10-man Fulham is a poor test. I think Chelsea will probably need to have a look at a defensive midfielder. I think I did see something today. It was from Simon Phillips. I don't know how reliable that is, but he said the club are now looking at Marquinhos. And while every player has a price, Marquinhos is in love with PSG. He's been there most of his career. He'd be incredibly hard to prize away, even under Tuchel. So I think, but what Chelsea would like to do is probably get a midfielder, and even Tuchel as well. I think both for once Tuchel and Chelsea be aligned to getting a sitter. And I tell you what, I think Ethan Ampadu, he might be tested out there in defensive mid. You guys have brought up Christensen. I personally haven't seen enough of him, just in general. He's been underplayed to judge how amazing he'd be at centre defensive mid. But his passing is undisputed, right? It's brilliant. So it'd be brilliant to try out. But maybe you could see another sitter, sort of like a Marquinhos type, come in. And one of you mentioned Jorginho. I think I have two players noted down who I think might receive the least game time. One of us Azpilicueta and one of us Jorginho, just because they're some of the lesser mobile players. But the thing is with Jorginho at the same time, he's incredibly useful against a deep sitting defense. I mean, if I say Jorginho, everyone in the chat and all of you guys will think of him receiving the ball in midfield, first time pass over the top, Werner straight through on goal, or Tammy Abraham straight through on goal. And with some teams that can be really useful. But I think if he's Tuchel's cone against a team, he wants to press really hard in like a Southampton mould, Jorginho might be left out a bit. He's one of the players that have the least pressures in the Chelsea team, less than some players who've received half the game time than him. So that's my only worry there for him. But like I said, he's such a useful player. We don't know. But yeah, what do you guys think about midfielders?
I guess the question is for the summer, because Billy Gilmour and Jorginho certainly have similar attributes, other than that Billy Gilmour is a lot more mobile. Obviously, Billy Gilmour could certainly be used as an 8-2, which Jorginho is probably not that suited to. So I think the club's idea would probably be to cash in on Jorginho as long as they can, and he has some sort of value to him. And then that replacement will just be Billy Gilmour. I assume that's the plan, with obviously what Alex touched on, the likes of Ampadu or someone being brought in as a proper sitting DM. And yeah, I mean, someone said it in the chat as well. Scott compared Jorginho to Verratti. I think in terms of passing, that's probably not wrong, but I think Verratti is an unbelievable dribbler. A bit like Kovacic, where you sit there and see a midfield player and you're like, why are you so good of a dribbler, but you play midfield and you're kind of not making anything of it? Which sounds harsh to Verratti, but whenever I've watched PSG or Italy, that's always what I've heard. I'm like, you're so good, but because you're not that quick and you don't really score that much, you're like, you could do so much more with your talents. That's why I like to compare.
Yeah, I think Verratti. Tell you what makes Verratti special is he's just been compared to Jorginho and Kovacic. He's basically a mix of the both. He's got the passing range of Jorginho and the exceptional press resistance of Kovacic. So yeah, I see where you're coming from in that.
Yeah, let me just go through. Go on, Scott. Finish your point.
You talk of Dave. I mentioned on the mid-season player ratings. One thing I could see, just because of that DM, from what I'm reading, it looks like he likes to have the DM is able to drop between the centre backs at times when the fullbacks attack. Dave could be that DM. He doesn't have to get forward because he's not that mobile. Defensively, we know how good he is. In terms of the one-on-ones, yeah, he's aged a bit and it might have diminished a bit. But one-on-ones, he's fairly good when he's not doubled up. And we know, as I said, he has the passing ability. You need only go and look at how he was doing with Morata to see how good his passing ability was. He could be one where I look at and go, similar to how we did with Guerrero, just the other way around, where he looks at and goes, you have the attributes to play that role. You could play that role as a makeshift until we get to the summer and we look at players like Marquinhos, or like, for someone I'd probably taken that role is an Idrissa Gueye. Personally, if he wants to get someone he's already worked with, he wants to get someone who could do that sitting role. I think it's a makeshift option. I think could be used. Yeah,
that's an interesting point. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, again, just want to say, if you guys want to see more of Alex, Euro Expert on Twitter, guys, go check him out. I've left the link in the description.
All of you should as well.
What?
I said I just followed him, so all of you should as well.
Yeah, literally, link is in the description below if you guys want to hear more from Alex. Check out the Euro Expert. Let me go for a few of the super chats quickly before we continue. Don't think Jorginho is comparable to Verratti. Yeah, Verratti was vital to Tuchel because of his press resistance. Yeah, I think we've touched on that one. I think we touched on this one as well. Could we see the 4-2-2-2 Tuchel use that PSG replicated here? yeah, we've gone through that one as well. But yeah, we could see that one happening, but there's a very different formations. We've spoken a lot about players that he could try and suit or try and find to fit a different system. Is there any players that you think he just isn't going to be able to use, and there's players that are just going to be out the door that are already in the first team now? Not we won't talk about loan armies and players like Mishi and anything like that, but any players in the squad right now, do you think that there's no need for?
I'll be real.
Alonso.
Depending on who he uses, if he goes for what I said, where he goes a 4-3-3 with the Tiger Man, I don't know how much time Tammy's going to get. I don't know if Tammy's the type of player he's going to work with. Just because you look at, for me with Tammy, the thing that he lacks in terms of, he's not got great hold-up play at times unless it's one-on-one. His link-up play at times is quite poor, I think. We saw definitely in the Leicester game, there have been other times where he's not quite on the same level, and I wonder if he could be one of those players that drops out or doesn't play as much to facilitate Havertz playing as that like second striker or the false nine or switching formation.
That's an interesting point actually, in terms of, it's like, I think that's the reason that Giroud is often opted over Tammy, right? Like Tammy's got the strength, but Giroud's got, like, when he comes on, you can just see him doing one flick touches straight away, starting a counter attack, which Tammy hasn't got. I think the only thing with Tammy, I guess, is just more like, the reason I think he might be able to still fit in is that under Lampard, I think we've seen him slightly stalled. He's still more or less the same player that came to like start the Man United game. He's just quite a bit stronger this season, I think, and his pass has improved. It'd be interesting to see what Tuchel does with him. I think he's quite a unique player like Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but because he's a lot younger, Tuchel might have a lot more to work with. And just to touch on the 4-2-2 thing we said, Lawrence, I think you mentioned about Ziyech that if we were doing a 4-3-3, you rightly pointed out about the pace and the wingers. Tuchel does love pace in the wingers. It helps him counter-attack. I think one thing, if Tuchel to deploy a 4-4-2, Ziyech could be useful just because at times this season, I think after the Burnley game, everyone was thinking, wow, this player's amazing. He just cuts to the side, does this back post cross. It's superb. And then every other team saw that and thought, right, so stick 2 men on Ziyech. That helps Chelsea a bit. When you have 2 up front and Ziyech's going to be a bit deeper, he'll have that extra bit of space, the extra 2 yards of space to work with where he can cut inside and do the cross. So do the cross if it's his own one. But I think Ziyech still has a part to play. I think, honestly, the only player, I guess, who might be limited, we mentioned Azpilicueta, but Scott, I think that was a really unique point I didn't see coming, which I actually think really works. Makes sense in my head the more I think about it. Maybe Giroud, even though he's a world-class striker, he is the least mobile of our players, and he does pose the other threat, which is the reason I think he'll still be useful. But I don't think we should expect Giroud's game time to massively spike unless Tuchel really looks at him and thinks, okay, for the rest of the season, I'm going to maximize the usage of you.
Yeah, I think that's the issue with Giroud. First of all, he's 34, so he's not exactly going to be molded into any sort of different type of player anymore, and he just doesn't have pace. And I think that's why I think the Tammy one. I agree with Scott. Tammy won't start as much under Tuchel as he might have done under Frank this season, just because Werner suits the striker role more the way Tuchel plays than it did under Frank, and he will find a way to make Werner as a striker actually work. I'm confident, I'm hopeful, let's say, but I do think first of all he can't play every game, and I do think that while obviously the touch not being the same and the creativity not being the same, the frame of Tammy and Kai is extremely similar. So just using Tammy in a similar role of going in, getting in behind, because what Tammy has is the pace but still be tall, and that's not that common. I mean, I guess Haaland brings it, but Haaland is still, again, it's like a bit different. Haaland is more power pace. Tammy, even though he's really tall, he looks like just mobile pace, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
People disagree, but that's why I think Tammy can be extremely useful in the front too, depending on with who. I could even see it at times with Havertz, someone dropping deep, someone going long, or I don't know, playing a Pulisic next to him. Stuff like that. I think a lot of those things could work, and I think there is so many games. Realistically, we play so many games a season. You can't only play one striker, and unless we sign Haaland, we might do that in the summer. Who knows? But unless that happens, I think Tammy Abraham will still get enough game time to get his 10 goals a season or 15 in all competitions.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think the one thing we should really expect is definitely more rotation. I mean, if you guys remember I think it was the Manchester City game when Werner played down the middle, and he was clearly having an awful game, and it was getting to the 85th minute, and you're thinking, please take him off. And it was maybe it was a message to say, look, he's not doing anything, or maybe it was just if we keep him out there, maybe if we keep him out there, he will perform. I think Tuchel won't be doing that as much. If Tuchel started this season and had Werner go through a poor run of form or Havertz go through a run of form, he wouldn't have said, okay, I'm sticking with you. You start performing. He probably would have gone, okay, let's rotate it around. Clearly, this isn't working. Let's try and work out. And I think Tuchel will take a bit more blame on his hands. Actually, there was a good story from the Champions League. I think if anyone managed to watch it, the game against Atalanta and Dortmund as well, the first leg, Tuchel got his tactics wrong first in the first leg against Dortmund and for 80 minutes of Atalanta. He got them completely wrong. He was playing a 4-3-3. And I'll tell you what, I'll focus more on the Dortmund game. He's playing a 4-3-3 to try and counteract Dortmund's counter-attacking ability, like we said, with Haaland and Reina and everyone. So what he did, he had the players sit back a bit and Neymar, Mbappe and Di Maria up front. And what that did is, like my hands suggesting, it was a massive gap. So PSG just couldn't connect their attacks. And after the game,
he played a 3-4-3, didn't he, in the first leg?
It was like a mix, to be fair, but it was. If you go back and watch the game, you will see what was really staggering is just you have the three players up front and just massive amount of space. And the reason they didn't get any, I think they didn't get any shot on target till the 60th minute, was because they couldn't get the ball into them. And Tuchel came out and said to the French press that I got it wrong that game. And for the second leg,
the first leg, right?
First leg, yeah.
Yeah, it initially started as a 3-4-3.
Oh, 3-4-3, fair enough. But for the second leg, what he did, if my memory serves it correctly, he played a lot more attackingly. Neymar was coming deeper, and that's what helped PSG link up a bit more. And it's the same with Atalanta, just to quickly say, they started the game in a similar way. No one was linking up correctly in the front, final third. Then he brought on Mbappe for, I think it was under Herrera, or one of the midfielders, and basically brought the forwards deeper and helped it all link up. So I think where I was going with that is, I think Tuchel will take a bit more blame for the mistakes he makes, and he'll be a bit more quick to change.
Yeah, one point I wanted to go to as well. We touched on it 20 minutes ago. We never continued with it. But Scott, I want to go to you on this. You were talking about how his no-nonsense approach towards player power and how that could work towards our benefit. Could that work towards our benefit, or do you see maybe a potential like Antonio Conte situation? Because you're kind of describing the same sort of type of manager you see from Conte. Conte is no nonsense as well, but that didn't work out either. But that could also be because of his own stubbornness too. So what are your thoughts on that?
It depends on who he falls out with, because that was the big thing. The big thing with the Dortmund thing, not only like Alex touched on the stuff with the bus, was that he fell out with the wrong players. He fell out with the three most senior players in the squad and tried to get rid of them, which didn't sit well with the board. So it all depends on who he falls out with. If he falls out with, like we're seeing Rudiger and Jorginho and Kepa and all that, then I don't think it will matter as much, because we've seen, as I touched on earlier, we've seen him fall out with other players. And if, depending on their age, their seniority in the side, it just doesn't matter, because first, as I said, he's a control freak, so he'll want to control so much that it won't matter. If he ends up falling out with, the likes of Havertz and the likes of Mount and James and the senior players in the squad, I think that's when you can see the fractions start to appear. And I think it all depends on how he is with those players. It all depends on how those players take to him and he takes to those players. From everything I'm hearing and reading, he sounds like he's going to gel with the players initially very well, because of how much he likes, like, his style. He said in an interview that his style is very much, he likes the players having a system that helps them to mix and helps them to play, but that it's not so regimented that when they get to those final positions of needing to score or do something magical, they're so regimented that they feel like they can't do anything. It's all about giving them the platform that when they get to those areas, they can produce that magic like nothing. Like he said that he will never tell Mbappe or Verratti what to do in the final situation. He'll always build a system that gets them to that point. Then it's on them to produce that final bit. And so I think that's going to, I think you look at the players like Mount, like James, like Ziyech, like Havertz and Werner and all the ones we mentioned, I think that's going to work perfectly for them, because you look at like Reece James, just to pull someone out, his delivery, like he always looks like he wants to deliver the perfect ball every time. And there's so many times this season where we've seen where no one's in the box or no one's making that run, or it's just not the right situation, but he still really wants to do it. And I think that's where Tuchel is gonna work perfectly, because he's gonna get the players in the system that when James hits that ball, they're there for that final shot.
Yeah. And just to hit on the point about the player fallout thing, so Scott pretty well summarised it about what happened at Dortmund. A lesser talked about thing is what happened at PSG. I think you'll remember Adrien Rabiot. He left in the middle of 2019. What happened there is that Rabiot was kicking up a stink in the dressing room, and Tuchel did something no nonsense. He said, "Okay, you're just going to keep up." He was basically asking for a new contract, new wages, carried on rejecting them. And he said, "Right, you're not playing anymore. Get in the under-23s." He banned him from actually interacting with the first team, and said, "You're leaving. You can leave January, leave in the summer." And rather than, like, I guess what might have happened with players like Rudiger, where they still would have trained with the first team, didn't even allow him on the same pitch, completely disbarred Rabiot from it. And the reason it's not talked about is because it went really, really well. Rabiot was very well in the wrong, and Tuchel managed to paint it more that way, kept himself well-liked. By the end of that season, he was still well-liked by Neymar and Mbappe. And Rabiot left, and we don't talk about it because he handled it well. So I guess that's also another example that while we will be no nonsense, and there is still a lot of fear about his felicity, how he might clash with the board. Some people have already said it feels like a countdown's already begun for him. It's not necessarily. If Rudiger does kick up a stink again, and it is out of order, like the Alonso at West Brom, I think we can trust Tuchel to maybe handle that a bit more sensibly than his reputation might suggest.
I think player power is just an issue if results don't come. Because if results come, the manager will be backed by, first of all, the other players and the board. I think only when results start going against you, which is kind of how it happened for Conte, kind of how it happened for Frank now. Because, I mean, we heard that there was certain player power issues already from the summer on. We didn't hear any issues with it while we was going on an unbeaten run. So, and then that's where the decision is there for the board to take. Is it easier to get rid of the manager to solve the issue, or is it easier to get rid of a number of players to solve the issue? And that's when it always goes back to this manager go merry-round, because it's just easier to get rid of one manager than to try and sell players that every other club knows you want to sell, so you won't get the money that you need, that you actually want for them, and then you want replacements, and everyone will ask more because they know you need the players. And that's just why managers are always the ones that get the sack much before a player. As much as it's wrong, and as much as we'd all hope that players would go that just keep causing issues, it's just not going to happen like that. But as long as results go his way, I don't think Tuchel will ever have any issues. And that's kind of how it lasted so long at Dortmund. He fell out with players, but because the results kept coming, they kind of put up with it. But then he started falling out with the hierarchy at Dortmund because they sold certain players for way too less or way too little and not giving him significant replacements. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? You can't expect results coming in if you're not going to replace my best players that you're selling right now. So I think falling out with the board is one thing, but as long as you're falling out with the players, as long as the results don't drop, isn't that big of an issue. Obviously, there is maybe certain exceptions when you fall out with an extremely liked player in the squad and someone that's been around for a super long time. There is small exceptions to that, but you would hope that Tuchel is smart enough not to fall out with some of the most important players in the dressing room, I guess.
I agree, yeah.
By the way, Nizar Quintela just tweeted, the players have been told Thomas Tuchel will take Chelsea's training session tonight, so the announcement is also imminent.
I've heard I've been checking through Twitter, and I'm hearing the announcement might not happen until the end of the week, but he's still going to take over training.
Right, that can't be happening. I'm sorry, that can't be happening.
Like, I'm hearing different things, but I'm also low-key waiting for this. But with that in mind, the one biggest thing might not even be player power. I'm thinking it's more going to be will the fans take him in, because I've been seeing a key pattern over the last 2 years where all the ones who are Conte in didn't give Sarri the time of day. Those who were Sarri in didn't give Lampard the time of day. And I can see now the ones who are Lampard in not giving Thomas Tuchel the time of day and being the first one on his neck with any problems. With that in mind, how important are the fans going to be for Thomas Tuchel? And also, what does Thomas Tuchel have to do straight off the bat to get them on his side?
I think, to be fair, the situation going on in the world at the minute is helping him, because I think if there were fans in the stadium on Wednesday, I think it would be a lot harder, because I think you'd get so many people, chanting Frank's name, booing him, booing like some of the players, getting on their back. And I think now with not having that, as long as they don't check Twitter, obviously, and I doubt Tuchel will let them, to be completely honest. With him being just able to implement what he wants, I think give it time and people will come around, or not maybe come around, but you'll see a lot less people. They'll quieten down. It's like with everything. It's like look at Arsenal, for example. You look at the Arteta out people. As soon as they start doing well, they hide. They stop tweeting and everything. As soon as it goes wrong, then they come back out. It's like anything. It's like as soon as it goes wrong, you'll see the people who are this person out start tweeting. As soon as it goes right, they'll go away. It's like anything. But I think as long as he can get off to a good start, and as long as he can implement what he wants quickly, I think in the long run it'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think that it's right to point out though, Lewis, like you said about how important will the fans be to Chelsea, because I mean, as a bit more neutral, I have a bit more. I follow other fan bases, other accounts. There is no fan base more divided than Chelsea's. You've got one screaming for Tuchel's head, and you've got the other screaming with joy because Frank Lampard's gone. It's absolutely mental. But I think whether he's successful or not at this, I think Tuchel will try and be a bit more warm and relaxing. For example, PSG coming up into the Champions League when things were getting a bit more building in tension. Neymar wanted to go on his party in Brazil, and he could have denied that. He could have said, no, you're not going, and caused a big fracas, and he just said, no, go on, go for it. And it was a relatively low-key event. He did get criticism saying, why are you letting your player go to Brazil? Look at this player power. But it did work out for him. And I think what I'm saying with that is that the attitude from him will be a bit more relaxed, I think, especially in the first 6 months. He's going to try and calm things down in a way, sort of like the Gus Hiddink thing. But I think you're really right to point out Scott, about the stadiums. If the stadiums were in the fans were in right now, while I don't agree with some fans who say it would be 100% Frank Lampardian screaming at the manager, it's obviously way more diverse than that. It would be a bit ferocious. Like when Benitez took over, obviously not to that extent, but when Benitez took over, announced on an interim, you had fans already booing him in his first game. So no doubt.
I think it would be very similar to when Gus Hiddink took over from Jose. Like in
Definitely. I think it would be worse than that slightly.
Yeah, no, but as in there would be no hate directed towards Hiddink because he's got nothing to do with this. And I don't think there would be much hate directed towards Tuchel either. I think it would just be because it's not necessarily his fault, just like it wasn't Hiddink's fault. And because obviously Benitez was different in the sense that we hated him and then we were fuming, how on earth is he our manager right now? I think it was more a case of, it would more be a case of they would just sing Super Frank all bloody game long. No matter what was happening on the pitch, whether we scored or whether we conceded, they would just sing that all game long and possibly booing the board, singing certain chants that, you have seen certain comments towards Roman Abramovich, towards Marino Granovskaya, towards Bruce Buck even. So, there might be some of that, maybe not Bruce Buck, but, we have heard certain people asking Roman Abramovich who they are when I'm like, who are you to ask Roman Abramovich who he is?
And yeah, I think we all know who that's coming from there. But I was actually about
big up Rory, but he was definitely bevved up when he did that live.
Yeah,
he definitely was.
He's got such terrible.
Just to bring it up, to be fair, I think Lawrence actually made a really smart point in the fact that it will. I can actually imagine it's probably going to be more. The hate will be way more to the board over Lampard's firing rather than like a Sarri thing where it's cool for Sarri's head. It's more cool for Lampard to come back, because even in that stream yesterday with Rory Jennings, he didn't actually jump on Tuchel too much. It was more like you guys were just mentioning the infamous "Who do you think you are?" Like the board is all this. The board is the issue. Even when brought up about Tuchel, even fans on Twitter I'm seeing, like they're with the Tuchel appointment, they're saying, "What's the point? The board's just going to fire him in 2 years." So maybe he will be a bit more like Gus Hiddink. He'll be a bit more of a background figure, and at least for a couple of months, the criticism will be deflected. Maybe even if Chelsea have bad performances. Right now, it's Timo Werner and Kai Havertz's fault.
I do though think that the expectation of Tuchel will be extremely high, because people will sit there and say, if we sacked Lampard for you, you better be bloody good. And you better bloody get wins, and you better bloody secure top 4 in all sorts of dominant fashion, and you better get us far in the Champions League. And I do see where certain people would come from with that, because if we don't get top 4, and if we get knocked out by Atletico Madrid, you could say, well, there was no point second, Frank. I mean, you could have still gotten a different manager in the summer, but if this season's results don't change because of this now, there really was no point. So, you do see that. So hence why the expectation of Tuchel will be extremely high. And I do hope that he can just fulfill that, because if he can't, as soon as the fans are back in the stadiums, whenever that may be, if it even happens for the rest of the season, it won't ever be more than 2,000 or 5,000. I don't think we'll see full grounds until probably 2022, realistically. But, if things aren't going well, then I think then we could be in a bit of trouble, or he could be in a bit of trouble. But as long as results are okay, I think he'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. It's just one of those, as Lawrence said, where it's like, it's like the Sharks are already out for him and he hasn't even taken a game yet, just because of the nature of who he's replacing. But as I said, I think as long as the results go well and like we can start off strong, like they'll go. They won't fully go. They'll always be there and like to come out when it goes wrong, but they'll certainly quieten down. Like it will certainly lessen.
Yeah, well, we've got to 5 o'clock. There is still no Tuchel announcement, so we're stuck here for another hour. Go on, Loz.
I think what they're saying now is that Tuchel will be appointed today and announced and take the training session, but his first press conference will be on Friday.
Yeah, I read the report on that as well. The same thing.
Which is weird because, as to my knowledge, I thought Premier League clubs were obliged to hold a press conference ahead of every single Premier League game, and seemingly we're not holding one today or tomorrow. So that is interesting.
We might do, but
we haven't had a press conference, have we?
No, but it's 5 p.m. in England. Like usually they're at 1:30. Do you know what I mean?
It might be a case where like someone takes it for him, because I agree. I think we do have to have one, but it's not necessarily the manager has to take it. So
no. But I think wouldn't we have already just had it then? If it's not going to be him anyway.
True, but I could see, for example, like a Czech or someone like that, or someone else on the board on that level, or like goalkeeper coach or whoever, like
just chucking a player, like
just someone taking it. So then you leave that announcement to the end.
Oh, Scott just disappeared as well. But yeah, we're going to wrap it up here. I think, Lawrence, you said you wanted to do another live as well. So everyone,
I will be doing a live
as well. Oh, what are you saying?
I will be doing a live as soon as it is announced. Hopefully that happens soon. Maybe Lewis will join me. Maybe he will do something on here. But I will be doing something. So check that out. That'd be sick.
Yeah, you guys smash the like and subscribe button on my channel if you haven't done it already. Loz's channel. There you go. Loz's channel as well if you guys haven't done so already. Alex, thank you for jumping on because you've really provided a serious good education for the last hour or so. If you guys want to hear more from Alex, I've put the link down on the comment section as well. But check out Alex's Twitter link. It's also in the description below as well as in the comment section. So go check that out. Check out Scott's Twitter too. I've left that in the description as well. And yeah, Tuchel is basically announced. He is in the country right now. It's just a case of whenever the club actually drop the announcement. But we're here. Tuchel is here, and it's a new start just in time for the second half of the season. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let us know if you guys enjoyed this stream, and until either a few hours if this announcement gets made or until tomorrow, take care and up the Chelsea.